Alright, so since the pre-patch is confirmed for this upcoming Tuesday, I just wanted to quickly talk about the new allied races. Alright, so the first race I will talk about is the Dark Iron Dwarf. Okay, I think I will go backwards just to talk about the passives first. After all this time, I feel like Blizzard has kind of made professions obsolete. So when I see a passive like increases blacksmithing skill by 5 and blacksmithing speed by 25%, I find that to be useless, or that's not something I'm going to pay attention to when it comes to something I pick a race for. So the next one is reduces damage taken from physical attacks by 1%, something small. While indoors, move 4% faster. I can see that being helpful in dungeons, but still that's nothing too incredible. The next one is Mole Machine. While outdoors, summon a mole machine that tunnels through the earth, 30-minute cooldown. I have not looked into this, but I am assuming you have a select few locations you can mole to, and something like that is not really important to me, mainly because after all this time, traveling around the game is not really that important anymore. It used to be incredibly important, and getting, all the different portals and all the different ways you could travel around or make things smoothly mattered, but nowadays I don't think it is meaningful at all. So something like Mole Machine is not impressive to me. And then the active that they have is Fire Blood, 2-minute cooldown, removes all poison, disease, curse, magic, and bleed effects, and increases your intellect by 231 and an additional 77 for each effect removed. Lasts 8 seconds. So this one is kind of interesting, where it strips you of all debuffs, and then it also gives you an intellect buff with an additional 77 for every single one that was removed. At first I was thinking that this one was mainly defensive, because the first thing that I think of is removing all the debuffs, but you do get an intellect buff, which isn't bad. I would consider this one to be kind of up there, but personally I don't think that I will be race changing to something like Dark Iron Dwarf. Alright, next we have the Lightforged Trained Eye. And once again, I will start backwards to discuss the passives. So the first one is Erupt with Light upon death. The first one is Light's Reckoning. Erupt with Light upon death deals 7,151 holy damage to enemies within 8 yards and heals allies for 7,151. So let me look at a few things. Shadow Mend heals for 2,702. So right now, Shadow Mend is healing for a little bit more than 10% of my current health on this fresh new Lightforged Trained Eye. So this will be healing for a good amount. I don't know, a ratio like this doesn't matter much to me because you die. So when I think about some benefit I get from dying, I don't care because I'm dead, and my goal is never to die if possible. So in raids, I remember a situation on Star Augur Atreus where our holy priest was purposefully dying to proc his legendary cloak, and for a couple attempts I forgot, or I wasn't aware of this cloak for a really long time, because since I started playing Shadow, I wasn't looking or paying attention to holy priest legendaries for the longest time, so I actually wasn't familiar with him. So when he was dying, I saw him standing in Fell Flames, and I was like, what is this guy doing? Why is he playing so terribly? But then I realized later on that he was just killing himself to allow himself that free, 10 to 12 seconds of Spirit of Redemption, so he can just free heal without worrying about mana and just spam. So this passive reminds me of that, where possibly in a raid setting, you sacrifice yourself for the pull. But in a dungeon setting, I don't think this will ever be good. I mean, I can see situations where it will be good, but extremely situational. The next one is Holy Resistance, reduces holy damage taken by 1%, tiny. Demon Bane, experience gains from killing demons increased by 20%, very minor or too specific for me to care. Light's Judgment. Call down a strike of holy energy, dealing 3,632 holy damage to enemies within 5 yards after 3 seconds. 2.5-minute cooldown. Mind Blast does 1,247 damage, so I don't know. I always feel like active passives that is just dealing damage doesn't really impress me because we already have damaging spells. An additional racial that deals damage doesn't feel that exciting, so something like this I don't really care for. And then the other one is Summon a Forge of Light enabling blacksmithing. Similar to what I said earlier, a profession related racial doesn't really mean much to me. Okay, so the last one here we have Void Elf, and this was a race that when I first read the racial, I was thinking that their spatial rift would be extremely good because it felt like a teleport, but after trying it in the game, I'm not really certain that I like it at all. So let me just go through again, starting from passives. Their first one is Preternatural Calm. Your spellcasts are not delayed by taking damage. That is actually pretty decent, although nowadays I don't even notice when my cast is pushed back from damage, because back when I was playing in BC, it was very noticeable because you could be interrupted endlessly. Like it could keep being pushed back. So now something like this where you're not delayed, I don't really know if I would notice that or care about it that much. Their next one is Ethereal Connection, reduces the cost of void storage and transmog by 50%. For me, I feel like picking a race is for utility or a damage buff, not something like void storage and transmog. And also for me, I actually don't transmog that often because earlier I did one and I didn't realize, I forgot that they were so expensive. 500 gold to change your appearance constantly. I actually like to keep my appearance pretty stable, so something like this is kind of useless for me. Next one is Entropic Embrace. Your abilities have a chance to empower you with the essence of the void, causing your damage and healing effects to deal an additional 5% as Shadow Frost for 12 sec. I'm surprised they haven't fixed that yet. But I actually looked this up. I think I was reading a Reddit post about it, and initially it sounds like it could be quite powerful, right? But I think somebody posted in response to a Reddit thread that the bonus is actually not as incredible as you would think. So sounds really good, but on average it's probably a similar damage buff to other racials. The next one is Chill of Night, reduces shadow damage taken by 1%, small. And then here we have Spatial Rift. So what I was saying earlier about why I thought it was powerful is when I first read about it, I thought that it was like a warlock portal where you would place it and then activate it later to use it. But what I don't like about this ability is you have to place it and then use it within a few seconds, otherwise it goes on cooldown and then you can't teleport at all. So let me show you. I'm gonna place it and then I have to use it in a few seconds in order to take advantage of it. And I feel like for something like a teleport, I can definitely see situations where a short-term teleport would be meaningful. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you guys Spatial Rift if you don't use it. So let's see how many seconds. I'm gonna cast it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I'm not sure if I counted too slow or too long, but roughly 5 seconds to reuse it before it goes on cooldown. So I think my main issue with that racial is I'm trying to think of boss fights right now where I can anticipate a short-ranged teleport being useful. So a boss that I just thought of was from the most recent raid, I think. But anyways, I'm just thinking of any scenario where there's beams. So if it's a beam that spins in the same direction, or more like a direction that doesn't change while they're channeling the beam. A good use for this teleport would be to place your rift and then stand there and cast, and right when it's about to hit you, you just use your rift in a location where it just passed. So this is super specific for me to think of where a use like this is useful. I am sure I can think of other situations where it would be nice. Like actually something as stupid as like say Trilliacs, where you have cakes around the room. You could try to place a rift on the cake and activate it so you save some running time. I don't know, silly situations like that. But personally, I think the fact that it starts going on cooldown after 5 seconds of placing your rift, I just don't like that use for this racial. I feel like I would find it very awkward to use. So I do have to say that at first, when they announced all those allied races, I was a little concerned that I would have to race change to something that was better, like potentially releasing a race with a really, really good racial that would trump everything else, that would make me feel compelled to change. But after looking those over, I'm really, really happy to say that I will most definitely be sticking with human. I have been human for forever, like I mentioned, so I'm really happy to stick with this race. Every man for himself was nerfed, which sucks, but I really like the removing stun effect. So it was nerfed by 1 whole minute, which is, I think it feels pretty big. Well, the only thing I have to go on was PvP, which is not accurate at all. So I'll definitely have to see how it feels like in a PvE situation. But I, at least in Legion, found many, many uses for it. So I think it was amazing, and I still think I will greatly enjoy using it. Since the new racials don't actually interest me all that much, I don't think I will be spending the time doing the quest chains to unlock them for my account. So that actually makes me kind of happy, because I'm glad that I won't have to spend the time questing to obtain them, because I'm not a big fan of questing. I'd say on Tuesday, the main thing that I will be focused on doing is setting up my talents for questing, and then setting up my weak auras as well for discipline, because I will most likely be questing as disc, mainly because I don't think that it will be that much slower, or I don't even know if it will be slower than leveling as shadow. Plus, if I want to do dungeons while questing, which you usually do 1 or 2 for quest completion, I can just queue as a healer. And I know that I could level as shadow and still queue as disc, but I don't feel like switching specs to do both of them. So disc damage should be fine for questing. And I already sold all of my mats and everything to make sure that I'm selling them before they go super cheap after the expansion launches and all of that. So I will most likely maybe be making some UI changes also in anticipation of being a healer. So once the pre-patch comes out on Tuesday, I'll definitely be doing a few preparations for the launch.